Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me all right. To me it sounds all right here. This is quite a big room. So, opening society, I made a new title for my talk. Louder, all right. I'm gonna apply myself. So the title of this talk now is Opening Up Society, Opening Up the Public, and I'm gonna try to find, I call this thoughts on capsulating the public, and well, all of this isn't that easy, so give me a second. Oh, all right. Learn something new today. So, it's about a network against right-wing activism. It's about digital public sphere and civic society. So, not everyone will know about this. What is Schmalbad and what do they do? At the end of November, I was quite disturbed by the election of Donald Trump, and I decided late one afternoon to write a blog post and publish a call for action to try to get together and discuss online media, because I think that online there's a lot of discussion going on about problems, and I think there's that's the place where you need activism. And then, you know, to talk about this here at Republica is sort of superfluous, but obviously it's the right place to be. So there, we made a camp with over 100 people in Berlin, because I got a lot of responses from people on this project. I thought it would be 10 or so, but a few hundred actually wrote emails to me, and so I didn't even know how to handle that. And to explain what we do, I made a mission statement devised from our first camp in Berlin in January. Join us. Schmalbad is a young network for a fair and neutral debating culture against populism in a free and open society. So this is our best guess at what we want to achieve with this. So to talk about this in detail, it's about doing something against populism for a free, open, pluralistic society. So we need to, you know, there's a lot of discussion about terms and definitions here, but it's about the way we want to held discussion should be held. So this is called Schmalbad because there was talk about Breitbart coming to Germany, Schmal being the opposite of bright in German. And then there was an article online, cash-strapped lefties demand money for anti-Breitbart site, published on Breitbart, with a nice picture of me. I posted this picture on Christmas Eve because I won this hat. And Breitbart took this from my Facebook account and put it on their site. And I decided not to take any legal action because, you know, why should I? But that's the way they work. And, well, I'm a journalist, and it is true that we need money. We did a funding campaign, but this wasn't the main goal. So there's been a lot of feedback on various kinds of media, lots of reports on us, and from my small expectations at the beginning, they grew and grew. And from my experience in the NGO sector, from my friends there, I was told that, this is quite typical because there's quite a few people joining, telling you, I can do this and that and this and that, and just, tell me if you need me. And so I thought, just doing a small project with over 200 people, that would be, a waste of all these helpful people. And so we have all these products, these people, all these all these frameworks. And so we try to create this sort of framework for people to be able to create new projects. And then I thought 200 people divided by 15, that's quite a lot of possible projects. And maybe you can tell by now from the way I'm speaking that the next step wasn't quite so great. So there's a website called voxpopulisti.de where we talk about right-wing activism. Schmalbart.de itself. We have a new ebook called The New Right-Wing Movement to be downloaded for free. And then when I asked myself, what can we actually achieve here, I saw that communication is activism. When people see, that there's something going on, then it changes the political sphere, and our output isn't, as big as we originally thought, but it still has an influence. And it's definitely the case that activism from one person motivates another person to also get active and do something. And so we shouldn't, talk about clicktivism. Somebody from the Green Party in Germany, they told me we were standing in the mud back in the days, protesting against nuclear power plants, but just to disregard online activism, I think it's important to really see online activism as a legit form of activism as well. And so we have this experiment with loose digital, connections. So we had this idea, and we tried to build something on that. But of course, it's quite difficult to have this sort of project and dividing up the work. And we also found that you have to be really careful when you write text, because it really has to be correct, so you do not make any mistakes. And also, it was difficult for me to be at the front of this whole thing and be vulnerable at the front. And so we have these sort of two sides, and there has to be some kind of expectation, some kind of definition at the beginning, because there's quite a problem, can be quite a problem. So a few thoughts on the digital public sphere.
I said on Republica, let's make a story. It's about a bird, a hedgehog, and a bee, and 3 old white men. I play these as well. What I noticed is we spend a lot of time to talk about what we want to do, what do we want exactly. Many said, what are the rules? How can I talk as Schmalbart? And a lot of people try to have a unifying philosophy, discussed about it a lot. And it was surprising for me, because we just go outside and tell our opinion. And apparently it's not that way, because a lot of the time you try to find identity, and if new people join in the process, this discussion will begin again, or you just close up. This very liquid network is a mirroring structure, and here I show how many discussions are inside and outside of Schmalbad. You see it's 10 to 90% was hard, but actually we want to not have a conflict with the political opposition. And I see that it can be hard, and discussions have to be internal, and we don't want to push up the value of people. And there are impregnation mechanisms where we say, are we talking against left-wing populism as well, or all populism, where terminology it's unclear? And with this clear statement, we're going outside and talk against right-wing populism. It gets a bit unclear, and so it can't be attacked anymore. I found that interesting, even today. And this, we are defining ourselves via our opposition, and Breitbart didn't launch in Germany. It won't launch before the elections, and the question is our enemy there or is it not? And this is why we have to talk about this. After that, I saw that after the whole event, I discussed a lot about how we can be attacked. People want to stay anonymous. And I noticed that right-wing tactics are successful because people are thinking about what happens if, can I be safe? Nobody can be 100% safe. This is why it's so virulent. And I said, when my friend asked me if she would have to buy pepper spray or something like that, even though nothing happened, I'll say this. I was pretty open on the outside. I didn't get any hate mail, no bodily attacks, no voice calls, nothing, but a few tweets that weren't even relevant to the law. My reaction to this is, don't get infected by this. A lot of people may have reason to have fear. I don't want to talk against that, but people like me who are a privileged group can or should act a little more without fear. This is just my opinion. We saw this in our group. Once the first people went outside with their own names, others went with them, and I thought it was important in this situation. My election is just show how it works, and this works the best in a group. After the hype, this is why I had this bird there. And then I forgot the name. It's the dirtier of the nest. We saw that, like we thought it will happen, it won't happen. Like now there are like 24 people who are working. The rest is rather passive. That's a bit disappointing with the actives and the passives, because one group wants and can't. The other ask why it has to work so much. And in the outside world, with all the critic on Trump, well, he won't let the world explode. AfD is just really not well organized, and Breitbart isn't there. But our goals are still there, and the others are seeing this as well.
So now I want to talk about effects online, but of course I know that there's a social, economic, basis for all of these online discussions. But I think that online we have some sort of special, effects that we can see. talk about leadership. I said something about that already. Quote, I'm going to start this, but there's also, some degree of decision-making necessary within an organization. And just, self-organization within a group of people who don't have like any real common ground, but just organize online is not possible, in my opinion. And now I have to speed up a little bit because the time, is running out. So platforms, I think that's not the right way. I think organizations need to be closed off, but a platform has to be open. When you look at the Pirate Party, it needs a lot of rules, needs lots of structure, and when you start thinking about how to start something, you really notice that, because that's also some sort of platform where you need resources and rules. More examples, like Sascha Lobo apparently said on day one, I'm here, hashtag ich bin hier, hashtag I am here. Why does that work? It's one place where you go. It's everyone can participate. All you need to do is click. You get permanent feedback from the group, which tells you about the motivation. So this is quite a low-level point of entry. And so this is a nice way to bring a conflict out in the open. And the hashtag also has some effect within the group. And so the group really can, build itself up. And a few days ago, but we also saw that a discussion within this group can also be difficult, because the group staying together mostly works by consent, by agreeing with each other. And so discussions are quite difficult as well. And so I thought about the hashtag, and I thought, it also has an effect, an inward effect. It's like a marker, like, stones piled up that tell you, somebody was here before you, and you can also walk along this path. And so this isn't just some sort of search function. I originally thought it was a message to, the people running the platforms, but I actually think it's mostly about the other people, just like we see at Schmalbad, to tell other people that the way you're going is a way that other people can go as well. What's also important is what I found out when I read Richard Sennert a few weeks ago, what happens to conflicts online. He talks about the city. He says the city is a process of density. And so there's depersonalization, there's anonymity, there's a feeling of strangeness. And Sennett says that cities have to be resilient. And I'm trying to, I'm going to read this quote. Civilization means that you're treating other people as if they were strangers, and yet still try to form a connection with them and bridge this gap. And so when we talk about what happens online, this is also quite clear. A few years ago, I had 250 contacts online on Facebook, and then it was 338. And if you look at people 28 years of age and above, it's more than 600 actually. And so obviously no one can stay in contact with all of these contacts. And so Facebook does some sort of pre-selection for us. And obviously we ourselves also try to actually avoid new contacts. And I'm not I don't see Facebook as an enemy. And I like social media, but these, typical, stereotypical posts, this picture of a food, it doesn't say anything about us. This is a photo of someone else's food. It's pseudo-private. But if we post something else like foreigners get out or Merkel has to go. This is an abstraction and affirmation, and I think that this is actually, avoiding contact, and this is important, I think, because it's some form of political discussion. And now, when we talk about fakes and alternative facts, I think that people who talk like that actually want to avoid contacts. They want to stay within a group. They don't want individual contact. It's about forming an identity and making connections, and it's just basically throwing memes back and forth at each other. What's important to me is, if we want to have connections through social media, but also we need a sort of distance, then Facebook definitely has an impact on the social dynamic, and this is a conflict. And so I see the problem at Facebook. We cannot solve this on our own. And a different topic is what a lot of people think like this discourse is about, according to the German philosopher Habermas. In an online discussion, this doesn't happen in the same way. We cannot just transfer this, and if we look at people arguing online, there's no clear structure who's arguing with whom, and also the topics aren't clear. And so, according to Facebook, there's no clear model of this discourse, and so basically everything is in conflict and everything is critique, and every critique comes back as yet another form of critique. And so I see this as an effect, and there's no hierarchy, and there's definitely no resolution of the given conflict. And so this is, I think, the main phenomenon in heterogeneous groups, that there's critique and that there's debate. And of course that happens in the groups that I belong to as well.
It's important to understand that society gets a lot more complex. It's not just offline in the city, which is complex as well, but online as well, meaning that mass media are getting ever more important because they are like a link to linking together public societies. And the problem that arises is when mass media are called Lügenpresse, lying press, and actors in politics as traitors, that these linking points get negated, and everything outside of your living things get denied. I call this siloisierung. They are closing down. They don't believe politics and media. And how should we argue with these guys? So Schmalbad is important for me, so we can break open these filter bubbles against volunteering for getting blind politically. And this is because social contexts like on Facebook are not structured politically, but via other collections like families, friends, from work relationships. So everybody knows a right-wing populist voter. A brother of mine argues in that direction. That's really fun, meeting at mom. And I'll say that social networks, human networks, are constructed in a way that network sociology says this is so. There are bridge functions, there are holes in these nets, and people can be reached via these contexts because they are immunizing themselves politically, but not with all human contact. So there might be some kind of second discussion ground. So if you want to argue, what we can say, it's you can't just negate problems. You have to go with it. Some problems exist. You can't just color it pink. You have to show complexity that these questions have. Simple things are easy to do, and you can just deconstruct it by asking some questions. And showing diversity is important. And sure, having some utopias in mind or some radical thinking is great. They're missing that in political discussions, and the mainstream doesn't do it. And you can have some radical positions and discuss them sometimes. I miss this sometimes. Irritation helps, so don't do what they think you will do. Be humorous. I did it a lot in the beginning. Some people didn't like it, but it helped with communication, broke down the fronts. My favorite example is this image from a few weeks ago, where someone is a bit, and the girl is smiling. And I think that's a good picture for the stance we have to take in our discussions. In this confident and fearless interaction, and these motives of brain reactions. Like I looked at viruses, but there can be nets as well that context activate others, and if you interact with others in a way, this gets recreated on a higher meta level. And what we do is we have more contacts with others, link up with others. There are 6 other democratic initiatives here. Graf Zahl, the count, says that there are surely more. And I think this is the last slide. While classic institutions like churches, parties are losing spontaneity, like they are clustering, do a big coalition, which is, and the necessity to isolate themselves because we are not establishment, or because we don't have this label. We can be a bit more free, can ask other questions, can take positions we can dismiss tomorrow, and we have to see how this works in the discussions, and we can be surprising, to do art, and this might be the difference, while bigger, let's say more mature institutions may be more practical. We, the small ones, might be more flexible, have these networking structures, and yeah, maybe we are the German Michael, maybe we are the bee flying everywhere, disseminating flowers, maybe we are this pop-up store of democracy. I couldn't decide. Maybe we are the pop-up store of democracy. Thank you. That was on point, wasn't it?
Christoph Kappes.
Christoph Kappes.